This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Ever met a foundation that does it all? Say hi to NARS Light Reflecting Foundation. Makeup meets skincare in a bottle. It evens skin tone, blurs imperfections, and has a natural radiant finish. Plus, it's formulated with skincare ingredients to help strengthen your skin's barrier. With a newly expanded shade range of over 40 radiant shades to choose from and buildable all-day wear. NARS Light Reflecting Foundation. Find your perfect match.
Hello, this is the Cinemile, the podcast where we record our walk home from the movies, but we're not going to the movies today, and it's me, Cathy, and I am not here with my husband Dave. I am here with Emer Harrington. Hello, Emer.
Hello, Cathy.
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So the reason Emer is here with me and not Dave is because we are going to be talking about the absolute blockbuster show on Netflix, Apple Cider Vinegar. And Emer is a journalist who writes about health and lifestyle, and she is also a yoga teacher. So I thought she would be the perfect person to dive into this series with me. So thank you so much, Emer.
I'm excited to get into it.
When I initially asked you, I said, will you review the movie Apple Cider Vinegar with me? To which you said yes. And then I said, actually, I'm so sorry, it's a 6-part series. So you got loads of homework.
Yeah, but I've enjoyed it. It's the good kind of homework. I felt I could kind of like spread it out a bit and really get into each episode.
And it's been so good. So there's 6 episodes. So what we've done is we've watched 5 episodes separately, and we are about to watch the final episode together. And then we'll do a review of the whole series. So when you come back after the break, we will be talking spoilers about this. So don't come back unless you watched it. But kind of before we get there, I wanted to talk a little bit about the main character, Belle Gibson. Emer, to what extent did you know about her before this series came out?
So I'd heard of Belle Gibson as this influencer who, you know, it turned out had been this, you know, wellness grifter. But at the time when she was really big, I wasn't so aware of her because I feel like it was the really early days of Instagram influencers. So it was more in recent years when it's become much more prevalent that she's been on my radar, but I had no idea of her story in the detail that this goes into.
Yeah, so interesting. And the reason I'm so interested is because we lived in Australia when this was all happening, and I followed the whole pantry and I have read her cookbook and made recipes. I don't think I owned it because I don't have it now, and I always keep cookbooks, but I either borrowed it from a friend or a library. I fully believe she'd had cancer because it was in a book published by Penguin. Why wouldn't I believe it? It was before I was kind of aware of like really like internet scams, to be honest, and I had never heard of someone pretending to have cancer, and now we know that's like incredibly common on the internet. And honestly, her recipes are really good. So I do remember the scandal unfolding because we were living there, and I was so shocked. Whereas now I just roll my eyes at these things. And it's interesting, and I wanted to have you on the podcast as well because like I'm very sympathetic to the wellness industry, and I know you are, and like admittedly I love apple cider vinegar. I drink it a lot. When I lived in Australia back when this came out, it was right in the middle of this kind of, I'd say, teetering on orthorexic lifestyle, and that was just, it's very popular in Australia, and like I was like juicing, I gave up meat, I love apple cider vinegar, and that's actually stuff I still do, but I guess the difference is I don't equate that with Western medicine and like the need to treat myself if I'm sick. And like, yeah, I'm very sympathetic to a lot of the characters in the show.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so interesting, because I think there's such a fine line between, you know, wanting to be well, wanting to embrace a healthier lifestyle and be part of that and the positive aspects of it, and then just going so far that, you know, you mistake things like nutrition and diet for medicine, and you start you know suggesting that things that have no scientific backing can be medical treatments, or you know you just start fabricating things because you want to portray a certain lifestyle. And I think it's so easy to get so caught up in wellness and what the perfect vision of wellness looks like, that you can blur that line and take it too far. And I think we'll get into it, we talk about the series, but I think as well as the main character, there's so many other characters in it. And they really show where that line can get blurred. Sometimes what starts out as something just really, pure and wanting to look after yourself, as you've just talked about, can just take you down a path that just feels out of your control and not good for you.
Yeah, and I even remember in Australia when everyone was juicing, and I bought a juicer, and then very quickly I was like, oh, this is a bit stupid actually, because I'm losing half the pulp, I'm losing all the fibre, I'm throwing away more than I'm getting. And then I switched to I love making smoothies, but at least I felt like I was getting the bloody fibre or whatever.
And I think what's kind of over that period of time that you're talking about as well, you're looking outward for things to do for your health. That's where influencing comes from. You're looking at what looks good and glossy in the photos on Instagram, and the people whose lifestyle you aspire to, they're doing it. So you kind of throw away your critical thinking and your judgment, and you do it because those people are. And that's kind of what happened with Belle Gibson as well. But when you get back to your critical thinking and what feels right, you're like, oh, this doesn't make sense to me. Why am I doing this?
Why am I throwing away bags of vegetables?
It doesn't make, but it just shows how easily we can get swept up in the culture of something looking good and creating a lifestyle that's appealing and something that we aspire to, and we don't really question it, we just follow it. And I think that's where, in wellness and in other areas, that's where the real problems start, because we don't question the facts. We just accept what we read, and we assume in good faith it's true. And look, and the problems that gets us into, We
all now know what the internet's like. It's so interesting, because actually it was almost as if I was doing pre-research for this podcast, but it's unrelated. I listened to a podcast called Dr. Miracle, which is about the guy who invented do you remember the alkaline diet?
Yeah.
And it was total bullshit. It was about making your blood alkaline, right? And then it was supposedly going to cure cancer, and the entire thing was you drink juice and you do colonics. So basically what's happening in this show, but it was under a different guise. It was to make your blood alkaline. And he, I really recommend Dr. Miracle podcast, and it kind of the scam of what he was doing to people. And it's very the center where the cancer patients attend here in terms of lack of duty of care towards patients. It's really dark stuff, and it's so interesting because on one hand everyone's afraid of the pharmaceutical industry, and particularly in places like the States, there's due reason to be concerned about things like the opioid crisis and how that was propagated by the pharmaceutical industry, giving so much of it to doctors, encouraging them to give it to their patients. But then on the other hand, in Ireland, we're a highly regulated pharmaceutical industry, and I would really much more trust something from a pharmaceutical company than from an influencer who's advertising to me on Instagram.
Totally. But I also think, and again, we'll get into this more when we discuss the series, I also think there's something to be said for why people are so mistrustful of the pharmaceutical industry, of the medical profession, and particularly women, because I do think women have had a lot of experiences of being overlooked, of being dismissed. We know historically it is true that women haven't been included in as much things like clinical trials and research for pharmaceuticals, so there's very little knowledge about female health in general, and often women's experience in healthcare has been overlooked or dismissed. So you can understand why people are kind of mistrustful or slow to put their faith in the traditional models. But then what happens is that leaves this void for influencers and scam artists to come in and just prey on people who are a bit untethered and don't have something to trust. And that's where we run into the problems like what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, such a good point. Yeah, even only recently did they start testing seatbelts on crash test dummies that had breasts. So
exactly.
Everything was always tested on men, and actually specifically white men. So even I read recently about how dermatologists don't have a lot of references for particular skin diseases on darker skin tones, because it's all been done on white people.
Or heart attacks. There's a huge prevalence of heart attacks among women, but they present completely differently to heart attacks in men. So the heart attacks we see in the movies, where they clutch the chest and they have this really dramatic kind of pain down the side of the body, that's something that happens typically in men with heart attacks, but in
Yeah.
women it's actually, the symptoms are quite different. So like the Irish Heart Foundation and the likes have done awareness campaigns so women know about the different symptoms to look for, but it's because historically all that research just hasn't been done on women. And I know this is a segue, I don't want to get us off
Interesting, yeah.
topic, but it's just another example of why women understandably, you know, are slow to trust the doctors
Yeah.
or the pharmaceutical companies, and when someone who looks and sounds like them, and again that lifestyle they aspire to, is telling them something, that feels much more trustworthy and tangible and believable,
Yeah.
even though it's not backed by science.
See, this is why I need you on this podcast, because you're like me, we're empathetic. I'm empathetic to everyone in this show except to Belle Gibson. And we'll get to her when we talk about it. But I want to point out the kind of journalism Emer does, because I love it. So recently she wrote an article in the Irish Independent where she debunked claims from the likes of RFK Jr. around the dangers of seed oils, but she didn't just debunk them herself. What she did is she spoke to experts.
Yeah.
Like a real journalist.
What a novel concept. No. Well, they know, you
Yeah.
know, they have the research and the data.
What would a scientist or a nutritionist know about this subject? Nah. So yeah, that's the kind of work, and I'll link to Emer's profile in the show notes when we're talking, when I publish this. And yeah, here we go. We're off to watch the last episode. I have a couple of options for snacks. I've got some healthy snacks. I've got some much more fun snacks. We've got 2 options for drinks. We have
Apple cider vinegar.
and we have wine. So you can
Okay.
make your choice when we get there. But yeah, it's so funny because I love apple cider vinegar and I actually love the taste of it. And when I make it in the mornings, like Dave's like gagging out the door, like he says this is so disgusting. So he's been really vindicated by this series, casting aspersions. What I will say though is I like the taste of apple cider vinegar. I certainly don't think it would cure me of cancer if I had cancer. And that's probably the difference there. Anyway, it's freezing. We're going to go inside and we'll be back after we've watched the final episode.
Looking forward to it.
I'd like to welcome on the stage Belle Gibson.
It must have affected her that my book was reviewed as better than hers.
I'm sorry, who's hurt?
Miller.
She was diagnosed with cancer.
So she's consistently maintained. I have no reason to doubt her.
Because in her case, it's true.
It's a funny way. My doctor said you have brain cancer.
Here's a blog you might like. She's just like you.
It feels alright.
You do look incredibly well.
I've never felt better.
I have to find the right way for me.
We just got each other. Loved the session. Full body goosebumps.
Thanks for coming.
Belle Gibson. The brain cancer.
Right.
We are back. We have just finished apple cider vinegar. We've just had loads of lovely snacks. We didn't drink apple cider vinegar. Emer, what do you think of the show now that you've just finished it?
I thought it was really well made, and the story was really cleverly told. It really draws you in, and I think it was a great conclusion as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I had a total blast with it. I think it's really fresh in how it tells the story. It's visually awesome. The actors are amazing, and it gives you a lot to think about in terms of, I think, internet culture, wellness. I meant to say earlier actually that I heard a recent estimation that the wellness industry is worth $6 trillion.
Wow.
Which doesn't surprise me. Yeah, fascinating. It's really of its time. And now, like we were just saying, even watching back and seeing like all the old kind of Facebook and Instagram visuals, it really brings you back. It's a very timely story about truth and lack of truth on the internet. We're just kind of going to chat through. We're not going to chat in detail through every episode because, you know, there's 6 long episodes there. But in terms of the structure, how do you feel about how they there's a lot of time jumping in this?
Yeah, it goes between obviously when Belle Gibson, there's lots of different times actually. It has flashbacks to her childhood, which feature when she was about 12, 13.
Which is grim.
Which is very grim, and it's not a lot of detail, but it's enough to give you a picture of it. And then you have, you know, her time where she's building up this persona and story and I suppose empire with her app and then book. And then you have the present day, in the I guess 2015 for the present day within the narrative, where she's being investigated and it's kind of closing in around her. So there's a lot, and it doesn't go in linear. It goes right between those in each episode, which is really interesting.
And I think the show did such a good job of not being really explicit with putting years up all the time.
Yeah.
But managing the timelines in a coherent way. I think it's quite audacious how they've done it. Like it's quite an achievement that we could follow everything at all times.
It really was, especially because the times in the later day pieces, they're quite close together. So actually following, sometimes in TV shows or films when there's time jumping, they give them a different hairstyle or the technology is different. There's some way of telling, they might have grey hair in one, but they all look the same. So they actually have to be really careful with, letting okay, this is the storyline that's happening back in the beginning and this is now. So I think they did a really good job of that. It was always easy to follow.
Yeah, you're right. And actually Dave has been watching it as well, but he's not as far ahead as I am. But one of the things Dave was commenting on was like how much money this show must have cost, because they're constantly in different sets. They're barely reusing sets. They've constant extra scenes. Like Dave was even saying, just that scene at the awards ceremony, like they'd have had to stage that entire awards ceremony just to film like 5 minutes of a scene for the Cosmo Woman of the Year thing. Like the money on display is like quite something. It's so glossy. Like it's been a huge hit for Netflix. Like obviously it's been number 1 in Australia, but it's been in the top 10 global streaming for, which is a huge hit for them. It's quite something, and there's like feverish internet speculation. Like I've been doing some of the kind of research around like what's true, what's not true, and those kind of blurred lines between real life and fiction. And I think one of the big lessons Netflix has learned after the baby reindeer kind of legal fiasco for them is you can't just say something's a true story and leave it at that, because of course it's been fictionalized. But what they did so stylishly here is they wove that into every episode. So someone will always say, this is a true story based on a lie. And then they might look at the camera and say, Belle Gibson hasn't been paid for this. And I love how they integrated that.
Yeah, because obviously that was something that was necessary for them to say at the top of every episode. But as you say, they cleverly wove it in by having the characters say it. And in the first episode, it was the actress playing Belle Gibson saying it into the camera as if she was disgusted.
Yeah, it was so good.
Belle Gibson hasn't been paid a cent for her story.
Oh,
but
yeah,
all
then
the way through. Yeah, exactly.
So good, yeah.
But they did that with different characters all the way through.
I love when you see like writers or directors have to take something functional, but they can make it stylish. And even right at the end when they were like, they start telling us what happened, and then they go, actually you can just Google it. Like there's such style in here.
Exactly. And a lot of those elements, I think, and how they told the story were really thought through carefully. And as you said, like the visuals, and they did a lot of it through social media interaction as well. Like a lot of I suppose the kind of the inner turmoil or the inner thought process was conveyed through like the emojis popping up on screen, or seeing all the likes and comments appearing on the screen while the character was there. So a lot of the story was being told through that rather than kind of traditional devices, which I thought was really clever given that it was a film about social media.
Like her online world is like a place of complete fiction and delusion, and like she gets so much dopamine from strangers wishing her well. But like it's such an interesting character study, to be honest. And I think the lines between like the fact and fiction, I like that the show makes it a bit more explicit that some of it's fake, some of it's not fake. And I just think the show went harder than it needed to, because the story alone is so interesting that I love that they were like, well, we're not just going to rest on an interesting story, we're going to make an interesting show as well.
And I think that's where they had some liberty to do that, was because they were so clear that this is a blend of fact and fiction, because everyone knows the fact now, that story is there. But one thing that I think is really important in something, particularly now in the age we are with social media, is when we think about something happening en masse, like someone scamming people on social media or stealing money from charity. It's not just those faceless followers and organizations, there's real people. But of course, you can't necessarily tell that with real life people. But what I think the show did really well is they picked characters to represent. So there was a character to represent people with cancer who fell for the story. There was a character to represent people who had money stolen from them through this charity fraud, and that gave a human face to the story, which is really important because it's not just a story. It's you know, real people's lives are ruined by wellness scammers and all types of you know, frauds. So I think they did that really well, and they could do that because of the blend of fact and fiction.
And it was so interesting, like the scams are just like the whole internet's a scam really, like at the moment, you know, between like really common scams at the moment. I was reading recently, like everyone thinks of old people being scammed, right, on their computers and with internet banking, but in fact a huge amount of like Gen Zs are being scammed over crypto stuff online, and then like huge amount of men are being scammed by kind of nude photos being, men and boys, nude photos being solicited of them, and then they're being blackmailed. There's scams everywhere you look on the internet, and I think one of the reasons this is probably so shocking to people is because those kind of scams I mentioned, they're kind of hidden behind bots or fake accounts, but like this was Belle really putting herself out there, just telling the most audacious lies. And like what's fascinating about her story is that like she was genuinely successful. Like that was a good app. I distinctly remember using it. She got on the first Apple Watch. She got like 50,000 downloads her first month in the, you know, Apple Store. Like really successful things that you're like, if ever you just applied yourself to being a legitimate business person, like she would have been really successful, but like she can't help herself lying, and that's quite fascinating. And I think that conflict actually came up a few times in the series, you know, where she was given an off-ramp, if you like, given an out, you know, why don't you just keep going, but without the cancer story. And I think I'm trying to go back a few episodes now, but I think there was a part where her partner, or you know, in the series, her partner Clive was kind of trying to encourage her to do that, and then later she tried to phase it out of it with the book. But there were opportunities to, you know, step away from that and just apply herself to being a successful businesswoman with an app. And Clive tried to encourage her to focus on the recipes and not this, you know, but that wasn't, it was the ego and the narcissism just needed all that personal attention that she craved, and she couldn't let go of it. And it was so frustrating because actually she's, you know, had this business plan and her aesthetics are beautiful and all this. And if she took away the lie, could she still have had this empire? Maybe. And so many, it's like Elizabeth Holmes. Like, remember, did you ever read The Dropout or listen to the podcast? And like Elizabeth Holmes, like she had a bullshit project, but like the amount of money and people she got to back this bullshit project, it's like, do something good with your time. Like I can't get over these scammers. And like what I find really interesting is like on the whole pantry, someone like me, I just liked the recipes. I wasn't paying particular attention to the cancer thing. Like I remember having seen that she had cancer, but that was, you know, I wasn't like ill and I wasn't trying to cure myself. So in that sense, I wasn't scammed. I just liked the recipes. And there would have been so many people like me who were just happy to read the recipes, and like this narrative was meaningless too. But once you understand that she's lying, you'll never make one, you know, you'll never use the recipes again. But that's so important though, when you think about wellness influencers and grifters these days, that, you know, it's still a big issue on social media. The problem that often comes up is people will say, oh, but, you know, this person shares misinformation, but they make some really good points, but they share really helpful recipes and tips. And, you know, I think that's actually like a model that some wellness influencers use. They gain trust by putting out really credible things. And the more you build trust with people by putting out, you know, sensible things, and often it can be really general, well accepted things that are put out there, but you're seen as someone who's sound, who puts out smart things, gives helpful hacks and tips and advice. So then when you put out something that's dubious or shady or, you know, hasn't been fact checked, people think, well, this person's great and they have a very slick platform. They always put out good advice. They just want to help me live better. Why would they lie to me about this? And, you know, once the trust is there, you're never going to want to see that person's letting you down, because if that's a lie, what about all the stuff you believed? What about all the great recipes? So it's still a huge problem. It's this really sticky thing in wellness where, can you separate out the person and the lies from all the helpful stuff you got from them? And
what does it say about you if you fell for it?
I know, and like you shouldn't feel like, yeah, it's such a like it's just such a fascinating topic, and I think the like with Belle, I think how the actress plays her, and her name is Catherine Driver, and we've both seen her actually in loads of different things, not the same things. When I first started watching it and realised it was her, I thought, God, I never knew that actress was Aussie, because her accent is that good. She's not Aussie. She's so good in this. Like how she plays Belle is fascinating.
Yeah,
when she
her
starts,
accent's great.
It's so
it's really good.
When she starts, like she kind of pants when she starts lying.
Yeah.
She's like, I got a migraine, and like
that's quite good actually.
she's so good, and like. You can see, like, I've been around people, I'm sure you've been around people, we've all been around people who are that kind of panic and kind of lie to deflect or to gain attention when they're feeling under pressure. And when she's feeling under pressure around, you know, particularly around this pressure coming at her from a few angles, and it's the son's birthday party, and she falls and does the fake seizure. So in terms of the fact and fiction stuff, I was doing a bit of research last night, and she did that. She actually did fake a seizure at her son's birthday party because there was a lot of witnesses to speak to it. Now, Belle obviously didn't contribute to the series, and neither did Clive, her, I think, ex-partner now. But there were plenty other people who contributed to the book, which the series is based on. So she definitely did that. A couple of the other things she definitely did was show up at... So Mila, that character, is based on a different influencer, a wellness influencer who had cancer and who sadly died. They gave her a different name here, and she doesn't look like her, and they changed some of the details, but like you can Google it if you want to look at her. And she did show up at that character's funeral, sob and weep, and then go to her house and go into the bedroom, like really fucked up shit. And actually in real life, in this show, they kind of posit they vaguely knew each other. In real life, they didn't know each other. Like they knew of each other because they were both in the same space. But that Mila's character, in real life, her dad has come out and said, I'm not watching the show, but it's so unfair for my daughter to be brought into this, because my daughter didn't even know that person, and it's just that person showed up at my daughter's funeral and tried to kind of get attention. But it's tricky because at the same time, the character Mila's based on was in public saying, you know, talking about a kind of holistic cure for cancer, and did put herself out there. So this is where the grey area, I don't know, like, can the show represent her? They didn't use her name, and they didn't cast an actress who looks like her, which was a big problem in Baby Reindeer when they basically cast the same person to play her.
Yeah, but I think another problem with Baby Reindeer was it was really easy for people to go online and find out who that person was. That was the big issue, because all they had to do was look up some tweets, right? And in this example, by watching the show, you wouldn't put two and two together, but very quickly you can go on TikTok and figure out who it's based on. To the point where her father had to come out and say this, and you know, that man's been through enough if that story's true.
And it is true that his wife and daughter died very close together.
So it's quite easy for people to find out that. And again, I haven't done that research to know that much about who the influencer who she's based on, but you know, she was someone who blogged and posted about this alternative lifestyle for, you know, healing from cancer, right? That part's true. So I suppose she was represented in this because that's all part of the same idea of, you know, misrepresenting something. But she wasn't the subject of the show. She wasn't the subject of the book it's based on. She never appeared in court and was found guilty of anything, and she never lied. She was wrong. She was very wrong, but she never lied or misrepresented anything, you know, and she's paid the ultimate price for it. So you know, is it fair for her to be involved in this to the extent that she can be identified and her father has to speak? Like, that is definitely a dubious thing, you know. And
like the character of Mila actually was so endearing, I think, because like I understand, like we were screaming at the TV at her when she should have just had her arm amputated and gotten the treatment, and you're like, but the actress played her so well that at the same time, I was like, I understand I understand why she's trying to do this. And like, that actress is called Alicia Debenham Carey. She's not an actor I knew. Like, I think she did a wonderful job of portraying her, and you know, she paid the ultimate price. And at the end, she does say, like, if I could go back, I would change what I did. But at the same time, she was on the internet when she knew it wasn't working, and she was kind of pretending, like that black. What was it called again?
Black salve.
And then I was looking that up, and it's like literally like government medical papers are like, do not put this on you, it's corrosive.
Yeah.
And it's so sad to me that someone would put a corrosive ointment they bought under the counter on a shop on themselves instead of just just doing what the doctor told them.
Take the medicine.
Yeah.
But you're right, actually, when I was saying, oh, she never misled anyone, that's not strictly true, because if what happened in the show is true, even when she knew it wasn't working, she was still sick.
Yeah.
She kept doing like.
But I don't know if she did that in real life. That's
exactly. So I just don't know enough about it to comment on that. I don't.
Yeah.
But I think what was good about that character and the character who was married to the journalist who had breast cancer is, I think they represented women who were really sick, who did have cancer, and we saw both of them separately being before their oncologists, their medical doctors, and feeling like patronized, dismissed. Like there was Mila feeling like the doctors were talking about her, not looking at her. There was the oncologist, the other character was seeing, who just kind of brushed her off and dismissed things. And it's really hard when you're the person living with this disease to feel like you're not even being listened to. So I can understand that rage, and the rage of getting a diagnosis like that and wanting something else. And she was really, really wrong, and she was really young as well, and it was a bad decision. But I can also understand, even though our logic's screaming at the TV,
oh my god, I was
just
screaming,
listen to them,
just get your amputation. And the thing that's so tricky as well is like, and I know a lot of people say this, and obviously we both know lots of people who've had cancer. The people often find that consultants are not good to deal with, and that real compassion kind of ends up with the nurses. But it's I think they made particular cases here where they put two kind of quite brisk doctors in front of them. I think they were trying to show us to make us empathize with the characters a bit, like that thing where Mila's in a room and that's like the crack team of doctors and they're all telling her what they're going to do and she declines it. I'm like, A, I understand you feel patronized, but B, boy, are you so privileged to have this team in front of you. I know. And like, you're just leaving. And like, she's such a good character. The other thing is like, when they both kind of start taking off at the same time, Belle is all about like trying to get, Instagram followers and trying to do all this stuff. Whereas Mila's character is trying to like sell her juices, which is not a profit-making enterprise, because she genuinely believes in this Hirsch method. And it's funny because like that they did such a good montage for Mila, and I just thought the show did it so well, where she kind of is on this tour and she's trying to sell these juices, and then you see her going like, they're $16.99, and then you
the price goes down,
$14.99. It's like, and like, how could you make money off juices? Like I spoke about earlier, you throw away so much ingredients to make these juices, and she's carting them around. But she's out there because she believes in the work.
But she's not a businesswoman. No. She's someone who believes this can cure people.
Yeah, she's like, I'm going to cure cancer. And you're like, oh no. And then the other character, who's Chanel, who is, I mean, it's a bit of a composite in the sense that they have her being both Mila's best friend and Belle's assistant, with the, just to link the stories. But there was a real character who was in Belle's inner circle who spoke to the journalists. And she is the one who gave a lot of the information to the journalists around things like, for example, the seizure at the kid's birthday party. And she also was alert. She kind of became suspicious of Belle because of the partying and like the lifestyle that Belle was leading. But like, what's mad about this is like that Belle would have told people that she had all this cancer and that it was spreading and that she was so sick, and like, she looks so healthy. And at one point, Clive, her husband, is like, I went to a hospital and I saw really sick people, or Belle's partner Clive, and he says like, I saw really sick people. Like, you're not sick. Yeah. But now the problem here, and this is the fact and fiction thing, we know nothing about Clive. I couldn't find any information as to if any of this is verified. Vague. Yeah. But they're using his real name, but like, there's no way that anyone can tell us those scenes happened between them. The scenes with Belle as a mother we were talking about as we watched this, they're like, I'm sure they're based on accounts of people being around them, but I think it's a bit unfair to portray like some of the scenes with her as a mother where there were no other parties to witness and to describe them, because like, who knows if they're true or not. It's all very toxic. Is Belle's mom pretending to have MS? Because the show's kind of positing that as well. Like, that's all mad stuff.
And I think that was one of the interesting parts for me, where they tried to get some degree like of sympathy for Belle by showing her childhood, and obviously it was a very difficult upbringing. Her mum was, you know, clearly not nice to her.
And she said they never had clean sheets. That was fascinating.
Yeah, that she didn't know you're supposed to clean sheets till she was like 20 something because her mum never.
Bum of a boyfriend said it to her. Like.
Yeah, and like her house is obviously just manky, so maybe that's why she was so obsessed with clean food and all of that. And clearly she lied about her health as a young teen to get attention from her mum, but was just dismissed. And
the mom
and you could see that towards the end with her little boy maybe trying to like get her attention, and it would break your heart, the cycle repeating itself.
I'm sure that was creative license as well. I think it frustrates me because she really has a son, and I'm like, I feel like that poor child has been represented. The thing with her as well, it kind of implied didn't imply it, basically flat out said that she shacked up with some older man when she was like 12. Yeah. Like, that was awful. So you feel a degree of empathy for Belle. Like, I did feel it when I was watching it, but then most of the time she was just so horrible. Like, like even from the very beginning, like when we see her in this kind of parent baby group, and you know, we both have kids, like we both have been in groups like that, and like she wasn't getting along, you know, like the moms are all there, and already because Belle's just so full of shit, it's like everyone always says Belle kind of gives them the freaks. Like people are just freaked out by Belle because she seems to be a very odd person, like very insincere, and she just, one of the moms says something to her and she just lashes out and says, your baby has a flat head. And we see her lashing out like that, like to Mila, when Mila says something, she says, well, have you not seen the video online? And she immediately sends Mila a Reddit thread. And like to Clive, when he questions her about cancer, she's like, you wouldn't get custody of the kid.
Or when she's doing the interview on the laptop and she's asked about her mother, and she's like, you're a magazinist.
Oh yeah.
She just like lays into the interviewer. Yeah.
Like, so I don't know.
She's got a short fuse.
Very short fuse. And I wonder if that, again, it could be total fiction, but like if she had that short fuse in life, she probably was quite difficult to be around it when you layer it in with all the lies and everything. Honestly, it's so fascinating. There's so much to think about. The other kind of characters to talk about really, in terms of the journalist characters. So it was written by two journalists who had written the original article, but the addition of Lucy, the wife with cancer, was fiction. But like, as you said, I think it's really good they put a person in here to kind of represent what that means, you know. So I think Lucy was a really good character, and we both really liked the kind of, albeit fiction, the kind of end point for Lucy and her husband, which was like a kind of in between of like, she's getting the treatment she needs, the medical treatment, and she's also doing yoga and enjoying time with her, like they're doing both together. Yeah,
I mean, if you were being a little bit stingy, you could say that it was a bit too conveniently tied up, and how like
it felt fake. It felt like a fiction.
Like I did feel towards the end of the last episode they were like, we're wrapping this up now, and everything needs to be tied up in a nice bow, and it was a bit on the nose. Like, I got it, but I feel like it was really clear what they were saying, which is like, oh, you don't have to choose between wellness and medicine. But it's a great point that I think they made it really clearly, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But
it was too neat, and it's because it's fiction.
And it obviously that part is fictional, that this couple came back together, and she is, you know, happily not too late to go and get chemotherapy. She's getting her chemo, you see that, but they're also going to yoga classes together. They're doing ice baths on the beach together, so you know, they're getting the best of both worlds. And I think it's an important message that we know we don't have to choose between the world of wellness and yoga classes and you know, holistic therapies and traditional medicine and cancer treatment, because both have a role to play. But I think the danger comes when you replace one with the other.
100%. And like, the end, it almost did rush too quickly for me at the end as well. I agree. It just kind of wrapped up a bit too quickly, and I wanted to see way more of the interview with Belle in the pink polo neck that we have seen clips of all
the
over
famous
the
interview.
I thought we were going to get a bit of a, you know, that Prince Andrew interview, and there was like a dramatic kind of movie of it with Gillian Anderson.
Well, what was missing for me was just the gotcha moment a little bit, you know, because I felt like episode 5, when I was watching it, I really felt the tension building, and you could feel the net closing in around her. And you mentioned that she kind of pants a lot, and you know, that increased in that episode and in the final episode, and she was getting like skin breakouts, and just you could feel the stress of the net closing in around her.
And then at the end, I just felt I would have liked a little more payoff with that, you know. And maybe the
gotcha.
interview, like I feel that what felt like more of a gotcha moment was when she did the PR interview with the publishers to kind of check out all her answers, and they were shining the lights on her. You know, that almost felt like more of a gotcha moment.
And that was earlier on, and actually I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to talk about it. So in the 5th episode, they say Julie Gibbs, the publisher, and the name, and I thought, I'm going to Google and see if she's real. So she is real. So there's some of the names in here are real. She is one of those real names. And I remember at the time being so shocked when I heard at the time about it, because I was like, why would Penguin have published this? You know, like they're such a reputable brand. And so I did some deep diving on this. And so what happened is Penguin, or the offshoot of Penguin that made this, made the kind of cookery books, they commissioned her, etc. And then months before the book was published, they knew of discrepancies online in Belle's stories, and they did hire, because it was during the media training scene that I was like, what's happening here, this is weird, and that's when I started Googling it. They did hire a PR firm to look into the background and to do this kind of probing with Belle, and that PR firm said, like, stay away from her, she's full of shit. And then Julie Gibbs and Penguin are like, we're still gonna print.
I'm
so they
so
really,
surprised that actually happened. It really is.
Like, I know the book doesn't say,
shocking.
Like, the book does not say this food will cure your cancer. But I went back and I was looking on the book online, because you can look at it, like on Amazon. Actually, you can actually view the pages. You know, the way you can see books and see book pages on Amazon. And it's mad because they've really exactly recreated them in this show. It's like all the same pictures and stuff. But it doesn't say like this book will cure your cancer, but it does say that Belle had cancer. So they published lies, like they
knew, like, it's mad. And not because I think publishing houses are just on some different moral plane that they wouldn't do something like that. Purely from a selfish perspective, I don't understand it. Like, would they not have, if the PR firm advised them not to go near her because this didn't check out and didn't seem like a true story, would they not have seen the reputational damage that would cause and the financial loss? Like, what ended up happening is they had to take all those books off the shelves, and or maybe they had just gone too far and they had to go through. I don't know.
Just it's like the I don't know. Everyone is just on this wave of shite, but like what I don't understand is I think, given Belle's platform and her success with the app and everything, again, they could have just published it but not mentioned the cancer. They could have just been like, Belle is the founder of the Whole Pantry. And
but
then
didn't
the book
she in the series try and push for that, and the publisher talked her out of it? Was that
yeah, that's the bit I don't know if it's real or not.
Yeah, that could be dramatic.
I don't know, but like basically, if they had just said she's the founder of the Whole Pantry, it's a successful food app, and here's the book, they didn't need to put the cancer thing in. So again, it's mad. Like, and like, look, we live in a world of disinformation and misinformation, and this is just kind of the beginning of that exploding out of the internet, and I think into like popular culture. But it's fascinating. I'm so glad you came on to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And also so fun to watch the last episode together.
Yeah.
I didn't make you watch 6 hours with me. And for anyone listening who wants to hear more TV reviews like this, head over to patreon.com/theCinemile, which is where we do all of our TV reviews, including at the moment we are reviewing Severance and White Lotus and all these good shows. So thanks, Emer.
Thanks, Cathy.
I know you want to do the right thing.
You'd have to be an actual sociopath to do that, and I am not. I mean, I could do like 50 personality quizzes right now, and I am an empath every time.
Unexplored catacombs buried beneath the city. A crumbling castle perched on a mountain peak. A top-secret government bunker. A cursed mansion cloaked in legend. I'm Sasha Auerbach. Join me and Tom Ward every Wednesday and Sunday as we reveal the mysteries and histories of abandoned places around the world and ask, where did everyone go? Brought to you by Like a Shot, makers of Forbidden History. Search for Where Did Everyone Go on your favorite podcast platform.